Hi, so this video is going to show you the steps to do the Inspirational Ransom Note project. So here's a sample here. Success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. So it's very legible. It is interesting looking. There's a lot of different colors. One thing that you are going to be working with is you're going to be finding a quote. This one, the one regret I have is that this one is actually a quote from Winston Churchill. I did not include his name. He's a famous person in history, and it might have been pretty significant to add his name. So while you do have the choice of putting the author's name or not, especially if it's somebody that's pretty significant in history, you should add them. Okay, you should include their name definitely. You can see that the words are very, very clearly read. You might even notice if you look kind of closely that the letters look like they appear to kind of pop up a little bit. And that's because I added a drop shadow effect. Again, these are some options that you're going to have. Also, if you're going to be using a letter, the same letter from the image that I'm going to provide, if you use the same letter twice, you definitely want to change the color. So you don't want to be caught using the same letter twice. So you can see in the word loss, that O, and then in this word one, the O, it's the same letter, but I just changed the color. So if you're going to be using the same letter, just change the color. I'm also going to show you how you can create your own ransom note letters by typing in a font, making a rectangle around it, and that's going to be optional. You will be needing to make some things. For example, if you don't have any numbers, and if you need a number for your ransom note, you can make one. Same thing with punctuation. You can see I have a period here at the end of the sentence. You're going to be needing some sort of punctuation. So it might be a dash, it might be a period, a question mark, an exclamation point, or a apostrophe. If you have any contractions like can't and wasn't, you're going to need a little apostrophe. So I'll show you all of those things. The background was an effect that was added in Pixlr. It was a plain blue background, but then I added this overlay of this space kind of thing, and I'll take you through the processes there. So let's get started. So the very first thing you should have in your Google Drive is a doc with some quotes. Now I asked you to have 3. I have definitely more than 3 because I've done this several times. And then for your own sake, and when you submit it to me, just highlight the one that you're thinking about using. Especially if you have a lot of quotes, it's easier for you to find. So if this is the one that I want to use, and I also included the author, now I'm all set for to start this project. What you're also going to need is this image right here. Let's get it open. And it is the letters. This can be accessed from Google Classroom. You are going to download it and put it in your Google Drive, so that way you can access it whether you're using the computers at school or you're using any of your computers at home. So you definitely want to have this downloaded and available. So we're going to use Pixlr E. So let's get started. We're going to open up that image that I just showed you, the letters. So that's going to be one image that we're going to be utilizing. And now we're going to be going and making a new image, which is going to be the actual poster. So File, New Image. I'm going to call this one Ransom, just so I know what it is when I save it. So, and it'll be a little nicer when I go to find it. Okay. It's going to be a specific size. I would like it to be 3,000 pixels wide and 2,400 pixels tall. I want it to represent an 8-inch tall and 10-inch wide image, a 10 by 8, 300 pixels per inch. So if the width is 10 inches, 300 pixels per inch, that's 3,000. If the height is 8 inches tall, 300 pixels per inch, that would make it 2,400 pixels. You could put a background color in if you'd like, and you can do that later. You can also change it later. So I'm just going to make the background white. So basically you're going to be copying letters here and pasting them onto this image here. So let's get started. So have your quote available. Mine is, you may not control all of the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. And that's by Maya Angelou. So I'm going to come over here, and the first letter I need is U. So I could use the zoom tool. Oh, get rid of that. And I can just go ahead and click. You also have some options on your keyboard. If you hold down the control button, or command if you're using a Mac, and the plus, that will zoom in. Command minus or control minus will zoom out. And those shortcuts can always be found in help, keyboard shortcuts. So zoom in, you see control plus, control minus, control 0 will fit on page, zooming once, twice, 3 times, and then the space bar you can move around. So what that means is if you're zoomed in and I want to go where the Y's are, I hold down the space bar, it changes to that pan hand tool, and so I can just start moseying around. You can also use the navigate options up here. If I move the rectangle around, the rectangle there represents my view, and I can move it to where I want it to be. So this is the Y that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the Polygon Select. Okay, so it's the Polygon Lasso Select. So I'm in the lasso, and the type is a polygon. And the way this works is I now have the cursor as a crosshair. I'm going to put the corner right where that intersection of that square of that cross would be, and I click. You can see it kind of stuck. And I click again for a new corner, click again for a new corner, click again for a new corner, until you have a full marquee around it. I can call it marching ants. It looks like these little marching ants around. It's also known as a marquee. So I'm going to copy it by going to either Control or Command C. You can see it flashed copy. And then I'm going to go to my Ransom note and hit Command or Control V, which pastes it. If you want to go to here, you can do the same thing. And here's your shortcut, C, and then paste as V. Okay? So there's my Y. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the O. I'm going to go find myself an O. I tend to just use the first ones as I go along. And then as you start running out of these letters, as you find you've used all 4 or 5 of them, that's when you're going to have to pay attention, and you'll have to make new variations of them. So it might look like the Y is gone, but it's actually what happens is they just get stacked. So I just moved it over. I'll worry about the size later. To get rid of the selection, you can hit Command or Control D, and that's deselecting. So if you have here select, your deselect is right here. Okay, so now I need the U. So I'm going to use one of these, and I just tend to use, like I said, I tend to use the first one. Back to the polygon tool. Notice I'm zoomed in quite a bit, and it really helps you to get those corners really good. And if you mess up, you can hit Control or Command D, and you can restart. Copy. Paste. Okay, so it's at this point that I'm going to start to put my letter together. So you want to do this when you are done with each letter, each word. So this one's a short one. It's just 3 letters. So this is when you have to decide on how you want these to be arranged. Do you want them to be nothing crooked, all kind of straight up and down, but do you want to stagger them? Do you want the letters to be all lined up on the bottom? A couple things, no matter what, keep the space in between each letter close. And also keep them consistent. Don't bring the Y, the U all the way over there and have these clustered together. Have a sense of consistency. So even if you want to kind of slightly rotate them, you can also slightly rotate them. Some could be high, some could be low. You can even make these slightly bigger or smaller. You know, it look a little bit more random, but you also want it to be not so random so it's hard to read. Okay, so I want these, this is the layout, this is fine. You can also change the order. You can change the arrangement, you can change the position, you can change the size, but you can also change the order. Let's say that I want, I put it like this, but I want, this is too close, but let's just say for argument's sake, I want the Y to be in front. I'd go to my layers window, and right here, this is the order. U is on top of O, which is on top of Y. Y is on the bottom. So if I want the Y to be in front, I would drag it up. You see now that changed order. If I want it to be behind the O, I'd move it down. So those are some decisions that you're going to be making. Another thing I noticed just with these particular letters is that I have two blue letters. So it's at this point that if I wanted to change the color of one of them, I can certainly go ahead and do that. So you already know of the adjustments with colors. You can go to Color Lookup, and you can pick an array of colors here, and you can always change them. I think I'm just going to go with a black and white kind of thing like that. And if I switch them, you can see that it makes quite a big difference. Okay. So once you have it looking the way that you want, and I actually want to change this. I want this to be sort of like a beigeier kind of color. Yeah, that's better. So again, once you've selected the way that you want, your one word is done. Now, before you start working on the other word, once you have it arranged the way you want, the letters where you want them to be, the size is right, and you also switched colors if you needed to, we are now going to go ahead and put these letters together. So they're kind of like glued down. So if I wanted to move this letter or this word over, I'm not bringing one at a time. It'll allow me to bring the whole thing. It's going to glue. It's kind of going to glue them together so they're in one layer. So to do that, you can go to the top of those letters. The topmost one. So it's this one right here. It just happens to be the O. I can hit the three buttons on the side here, and I'm going to pick Merge Down. So what that's going to do is it's going to take that O and it's going to merge it with what's underneath it, which is the U. And notice it only did it to just one layer at a time. Then I'm going to do it again. Right click, merge down, just like that. So there is another method. There's actually a shortcut. I'm just going to undo it. The shortcut is you can go to, make sure that you're on the layer here in the layers window. If you go to layer, you can see here's the option right here, merge down. In the shortcut, let me grab it again, sorry about that. The shortcut's Control 6, and I'm using a Mac, so it's Command. So if I just hit Command 6, you can see now that they glued it down. You don't want to glue it to any other layers except the letters of that word. Okay? So as you start working, you're going to really start to appreciate having different layers, having the words separate on each layer rather than moving each one over, especially when you have longer words. So one thing that I'll bring to your attention is you can set these up as large as you'd like. Notice that my word control here is, much larger than the other words here. And that's completely fine. When you're assembling them together and getting them all set up and arranged the way that you want, it really doesn't make any difference how large they are compared to the other words. But what's really important is you just make sure that they look the way that you want them to look in a word. Now one thing I want to bring to your attention is I'm using to move them around very slowly, pixel by pixel. You can use the arrows on your keyboard. And the arrows on your keyboard will act as, it's called nudging. And nudging, it just moves it pixel by pixel. So notice I'm just setting them up. I'm making some bigger and some smaller just because that's the way that I want to kind of set it up. You want to, if you see that there's colors that are too similar, You can change the colors of some of them. Probably don't want them to be too crazy bright, but you can certainly pick a nice variety of colors, you know, so they have a nice amount of contrast and, you know, visual interest. And especially if you're using the same letter twice, you know, change the color of it. And also keeping in mind changing the order. So I want this O to be behind the C. I want that L to be in behind that O, so you can move these around just by dragging them. So I want that N to be in front. I want to just change the color too, so I'm going to bring it up higher than the T. There we go. So once I have it the way that I want, and I like this very, very much, even though it's bigger, it's okay. Now I'm going to identify all of them in my layers window, you know, and you don't want to put them like, you don't want to bring up any letters, you know, with other words underneath them. You want them to be all together. So you got R, there's 7 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, and they're all stacked up. I go to the top one, it just happens to be the R, and I'm going to do the shortcut command 6, 6, 6, and I'm keeping an eye on it in the layers window. Okay, all right, looks like, and you can move it around, just make sure it's all together. And now this is why I don't really care about the size, because you can just make it whatever size that you need to. So you can see, like, once you start arranging these the way that you want them to be arranged on the page, it'd be much easier to move it word for word rather than bringing each letter over one at a time. Okay, so you just keep working on this. So I'm gonna, you know, fast forward to when I have most of the letters done, and I'll show you a couple of more things in a few minutes. So I've gotten to the point where I used up all of my T's, and I don't wish to change any colors. I'm ready to make my own letter. So no matter what, you're going to be having to do this because you're all going to be needing to have some sort of punctuation. You'll need a period, a question mark, a dash. Some of you guys, if you're using a contraction, you're going to need an apostrophe for a word like wasn't or can't. But I'm going to do this for a letter. Okay, but the same kind of thing would be applied if you're going to be doing, you know, any sort of like a question mark or a number, that kind of thing. So you're going to need 2 layers. One layer is going to have the actual character. In my case, it's going to be the letter T. And then you're going to need another layer that's going to be the rectangle around that character, whether it's a number or, in my case, the letter T. So I'm going to add a new layer by hitting the plus right in the layers button, layers window, and I'm going to select text. So right here, it's they give me a band of text. So if I double click, you could see that you could see it now. Now the only reason why I wasn't able to see it is because it is already in white, and you do white on white, you can't see it. So you have this like text box. So you can highlight it. You can change the color at this point, and this kind of stuff you can change. Right now I'll just go with a gray. I'll go with a darker gray. And I'm going to highlight it like I would a document, so I can just double click on it. And I'm going to put the letter T. Now I don't know if I want to do a capital or if I want to do a lowercase. Oops. So I think I'm going to go with a lowercase. Okay. So I have it selected. So now I'm going to come up here where the font is, all the adjustments here. We have the color, we have the size, and here is the style. So stay away from the ones that have this little mark here, then you have to pay for those. But hopefully you'll find one that you think you might want to use. I want to have something a little unusual, not too crazy and unusual, but different enough than what I have before. So you just kind of look around until you find one that you think you might want to use. So it'll take a little while. Like me, I can get caught up in these different fonts like crazy. Now that one's really nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for this one. It's just a little small. So again, I can highlight it by double clicking on it. I can change the size. I could do this later too. So just want to get it to be a size that I can see. So probably kind of big. Okay. Now notice the text box around it. It's crazy huge. All right. That's going to change later too. So you just pick your text. Okay. And I'm going to hit. Okay. So then I just click away from it. Cancel. So now I'm going to add another layer, and this one's just going to be a blank layer. So I go to empty. Now here I'm going to make a use the marquee tool right here, and I'm going to make sure I'm on a rectangle, and I'm going to make a rectangle about the right size for that T, just like that. Okay. And again, if it's too big, too small, you can adjust it as well. This is a new layer now. So right now I have a layer in here somewhere that is my text right here. Okay. And now I have another layer I'm working on, which is layer 27. And that's going to be where I'm going to put the rectangle. So I have the area selected. I'm going to dump a color in now. And so I'm going to pick a color, maybe just like a light orangey, kind of peachy kind of color. And then I'm going to use the paint bucket tool, and I'm on the blank layer, and I'm going to dump it in. Okay, so now I'm going to hit Command D and get rid of the that selection. So now you could see that it's two separate things. Okay, I'm just going to move this layer 27 so it is behind the layer with my text. So if I put it in front, it covers it, but if I put it behind it like that, underneath, so I'm going to line everything up. I'm going to line the two together. All right, so like I said, this text box is just crazy big. It's kind of silly. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these two layers together. So the T is on top of layer 27. The letter is on top of the rectangle. So I'm going to go to the top one. And I'm going to select merge down. Okay, so now you could see that it is its own, it's a layer, it moves around, so if I rotate it and stuff, it will adjust accordingly. Okay, so if I think if I click away from it and I go back to it, it'll kind of even itself out. You can see that once I clicked away from it and I went back to that layer, you can see that that bounding box around it just is much better behaved. So it's at this point it'll act just like the other spaces that I made. Now it looks too much like the color. They're both warm, so I'm going to actually change it to a cooler color. Whoops, on the wrong color, on the wrong layer. And I am going to change the color to something cooler, just like that. And you can switch them around just like before. In the way that you want. Actually, rotate it this way a bit. Whoops. Okay. That's the way I want it to look. I'm going to now join these two layers together by hitting, I'm actually going to do the shortcut Shift Control or Shift Command 6. And now these guys are together with my original T. All right, so the same rules would apply if I'm doing a contraction, if I have the word wasn't, or if I have a question mark. Again, I'm going to make a new text layer. I'm going to type the text in. You can see that it's white, so I can't see it. I'll double click on it, get it a color that I can see. I'm just going to do the same process again. Double click on it. Let's say I need a question mark. I don't need one. I just think it's cool. I go ahead and I go through the different fonts. There's hundreds of different fonts until you find one that you like. You now need another layer that you're going to put a rectangle in, and you're going to pick a color to be around it. Let's go for this one and fill it. So now I have two layers, the question mark and the rectangle. I'm just going to orient them so they're where they need to go. And I'm going to join them together. Merge down. Okay, this is one layer. And again, like now it's really big and obnoxious, but if I click away and I click back, it tends to kind of behave itself after you kind of maneuver it a little bit. Let's see if it does it. Yeah, there we go. So, all right. So hopefully that helps. So that's, again, it applies to like if you're going to do numbers or special characters, and or if you're just getting sick of using the same letters, you want to do some original letters, you can certainly do that.